Hello.
Hello. Can everybody hear this particular communication? All good? Thank you. You can come in if you wish. So I'm about a minute to go, I suspect, but I might as well start talking to make sure that it settles down and people get to their seats and all that kind of stuff. What this is, starting slightly early because I have a lot of slides, what this is Agile Coaching a Team as a System, basically. So the first page, apparently, that is a mandatory show, is a list of sponsors that have allowed this fantastic conference to happen. So take a moment to revel in them, and then I shall move on. So who am I and why are you in this room? So who I am is, my name is Caoilte. And I am a consultant with DS. I work as mostly, honestly, in a technical department, but I have had recent learnings in the softer skills aspect of things. And this talk is based on a story that happened to me in the last year. I was working for a project, and everyone in the team was deeply unhappy. Deeply, deeply unhappy. And there's all kinds of reasons for it, but what it meant was that there was a certain amount of siloing happening, there was a certain amount of not collaboration happening, and I didn't really know what to do, to be honest with you. It's partially a story of failure on my behalf, but I didn't know what to do. I don't really know how to fix it, and I didn't know what the problem was. But then I was fortunate enough to go on a course that gave me a direction to go in, and I was able to apply those to the problem that I had, and then I was able to see a transformation in the team. So the next 6 months after going to that course and applying some of those learnings, I was able to do really, really well. And so the question is, what were those learnings, and more importantly, why did they work? So, as everything, a team is born, and this is the start of it. It's a team, and it exists, it does something. It has a purpose, that's what makes it a team. It's something that's creating something or doing something. Now, it goes through the normal storming, forming, norming behaviors, and it starts to create value. So what this is your team on, the team on a little bit of value that it's created. So that's the value that it's creating on an iteration by iteration basis. So every iteration we have choices that we can make. So in this particular iteration, just after they've stormed, they decide to do some more pairing, maybe to engage a UX person, and then they've got a little bit of an improvement. They're doing a little bit better, which is great. So end of iteration 2, they then have a similar choice point, and they decide to aim for more coverage, to do some more reviews. Iteration 3, then they're doing even better. So iteration 3 happens. So they're very confident at this stage, and they decide that they're going to get rid of the embedded QA. They're very happy with how the team is going. They think devs can do it. They start mini showcases. Oops, it doesn't work out so well. Right, they haven't done well. It's a bit of a shock to their system. They haven't succeeded. So then, iteration 4, they decide to put back in the embedded QA, and they're doing well again. Right? So the thing is that then they continue because they're comfortable, they're happy, they think they've found what they needed, and now they're able to continue to produce slightly varying amounts of value for their customer. That would seem like an okay story. It would seem like a story that has an end. It's good. But is it? There's a couple of problems with this particular process. The first of them is local maximum. So this team thinks it's doing really well. But in reality, if they did something more extreme or something different, maybe if they went full Kanban, for example, or full XP, or some other, whatever the latest trending process is, they could do unbelievably well. But they're stuck in where they are. Their system is resistant to change. The other problem that they have is a psychological one. Stress. Now, stress seems easy. Like, people get stressed. But our bodies react to stress in a very, very unhelpful way. So our brain is wired in a particular way. And the way that it's wired is this. That's what our brain is wired to do, right? And the reason for this is because when we get stressed, we activate a thing called the sympathetic nervous system. And it floods our bodies with the hormones that let us take on bears, basically. We either run away from them or we fight them. That's what we do. Now, that is a fine thing in and of itself, but the problem is it's not actually what we do. I have not encountered a bear today. I suspect you haven't. Instead, this is what we do. And the problem is that when you've activated this sympathetic network, you end up having a, it's very difficult to get rid of those chemicals. And those chemicals, unfortunately, make you socially, intellectually, emotionally less capable. When you're stressed, you are less than the best you can be. The only thing you can do is run away really, really well. In almost every other way, you're less. But the problem is, to actually get rid of those chemicals, you need to activate another nervous system in your body called the parasympathetic network. And that can only be done if you activate compassion, playfulness, hope, or mindfulness. And that doesn't tend to happen to us very often. So stress is something that happens to us consistently. This is called chronic stress. And why it's important is, it's because it's not very important things that are happening to you. In fact, it's very unimportant things that are happening to you. In this case, let's say for argument's sake, your train is late, right? It's just, it didn't arrive in time. You missed it. Your performance goes down slightly because you're stressed. You're not capable, right? So your lift, there's a guy in the lift and he keeps coughing and it's just so annoying. It stresses you out. And again, your body thinks there's bears and it floods your body with these hormones that make you slightly less capable. You go up to your room and the build is broken and it's the 5th time this week. Again, you're stressed. You're a bit less capable than you are. So if you can imagine, you think that you're doing okay performance-wise, but you're not. Stress continually erodes what you're able to accomplish. Also, there's the problem of the drift to low performance. So this is when, basically, you stop measuring against the absolute best you can do, and you start measuring against what you've recently done. So let's say you have an iteration, and what happens is you say, okay, well, this iteration I did 12 points, it's fine. The next iteration you do 11 points. Instead of trying to figure out why didn't you get to 13 points, you start saying, well, it's relatively close to 12. And the drift has begun. Every iteration from that point, you begin again to estimate against what you've recently done, against the best that you can accomplish. And it keeps going down until eventually you're at a very low level of performance. So the question is, what can you do? And this is basically where my team found itself, right, in this kind of place. And so I wanted to figure out how I could get back to high performance. And the thing about it is, in my professional career, I have worked in teams where it clicks. And I presume everyone in this room has. It's that thing of where you go and it's optimistic, it's humorous, the opportunities are boundless. You're just in a team that really, really works well together. And I wanted to figure out why my team wasn't doing that. And so I uncovered a report created by Marcel Losada and Emily Hepvey in 2004. And what it did was, it found correlations of performance as opposed to causations of performance. And the correlations were a high ratio of positive to negative interactions, equal amounts of advocacy to inquiry, and, although this is slightly tangential to the report, strong shared vision. If a team has this, that team is actually probably going to perform really well. Honestly, it was across a large spectrum of different people, but the people that did this, that had these attributes of their team, performed really well. So the question is, okay, if I take that as a goal, how do I start to make this happen in my team? So to explain that, I'm going to have to explain causal loops. So to explain causal loops, I am not going to answer which came first, the chicken and the egg. Instead, I'm going to tell you that they're both related to each other. And what this says is, this is an actual system diagram, as simplistic as it is, and it tells me that the more chickens I have, the more eggs I have. The more eggs I have, the more chickens I have. It's what they call a reinforcing loop. Right? That's relatively easy to understand. Wait till I introduce chicken nuggets. What this means is the more chicken nuggets I have, the less chickens I have. And that's what that little grey dot means. It means it's a dampening effect. So what this also tells me is, I can say the more chicken nuggets I have, the less eggs I have. Because I'm able to see the relationship from chicken nuggets to chickens to eggs. And that's what a causal loop is. It's just a way of being able to associate the quantities of one thing and how they affect the quantities of something else. We also have fried eggs, for those who wonder what the system of chickens is. So to move on to what we're talking about positive interaction. So this is my team's, this was its system of positive interaction. So the first thing that happened was stress. As I said, chronic stress is constant. We always have bits of things that stress us. But the problem is that flowing on from that is two things. The first of them is that you treat others as a problem. And this is because you're stressed. You want something to be done. So you don't really care about how that person does it. You just want it to be done. The second thing that happens is you focus on your own goals. If you're stressed, you're not really caring about what some other team is doing. You're caring about what your team can do to succeed. The problem is, treating others as a problem and focusing on your own goals have a dampening effect on positive interaction. So then we move on to collaboration and consideration, which is what I've changed inquiry and advocacy to, because it's a single constant as opposed to two different varying ones. So inside this, the first thing that you have is excessive advocacy. Now, excessive advocacy is interesting because it's not necessarily somebody shouting or being very, very loud about what they want. It's somebody being constant in what they want. It's not varying it. So it's the person in your team who says, you know, we should just not use Cucumber at all, or we shouldn't do any BDD. When they bring that up every retro, every stand-up, people start to not listen. And what happens from that is that you get disengagement. You get the people who are just no longer interested in how we test things, because there's that guy and he's going to come in and he's going to talk about BDD again, and they're not interested. They also have the problem of the illusion of consent. If I talk to you long enough, you'll eventually just accept it, and I will think that I have converted you to my cause, but I haven't. You just want me to stop talking. So the next thing that happens is disengagement leads to coasting. If you're in a team and you don't really care about BDD, but you have to do it, what starts to happen is you just start to coast through the day, or at least the bits of the day that are to do with that thing that you're disengaged from. And the illusion of consent and coasting leads to less collaboration and consideration. So the last one is shared vision. So this you have local optimization. This is the negative effect. And local optimization just means I'm really in it for what I can see from my team or my subgroup or me to be able to do the best job I can. But the problem with that is that local optimization means you're not thinking upstream of you and you're not thinking downstream of you. And this leads to two things. The first of them is the focus on the now. If you're locally optimizing, you're not optimizing for 6 months from now. You're thinking about now. You also are focusing on your own goals again. You're not focusing on the goals of the team, or the goals of the project, or the goals of the customer. And this, unfortunately, has a dampening effect on shared vision. So the question is, okay, I was here, I was in this place. What was the right move? Now, for me, it turned out to be a course, but it was a course about Agile coaching. So at this point, you're probably expecting me to talk about stand-ups. Aren't Agile coaches just about how to teach process? No. That's Agile transformation. This is about team transformation. My team, and our team in this particular presentation, they are fully Agile. They know the manifesto, they know the principles, they can figure out exactly in the spectrum of Kanban to Scrum where they are. They know it. It's just the team itself isn't actually connecting. So, Agile coaches. Well, actually, Agile coaches aren't actually superheroes. They're just people, like me and you. In the same way that you hire an accountant because they're really, really good at numbers and the laws of accounting, you hire Agile coaches because they're expert in team dynamics, they're experts in systems thinking, and they're experts in Agile practice. These skills together allow them to start to do stuff. So what do? These Agile coaches that have come in with this knowledge. Okay, well, do they solve all our problems? No. Agile coaches only reveal. Now, this sounds silly. Surely, they're very skilled, you're paying them a lot of money, they should just fix your problems. There's really good reasons why they don't do that. The first of these reasons is how people change. So this was encountered by Richard Byrnes in the 1980s. And he came to it because he had diabetics, right? And these were people who had to take life-saving medication. If they didn't take the medication, they were more likely to die. But they didn't take their medication. And as a psychologist, he was, what's going on? Why wouldn't these people take this medication? And the reason was because their lack of taking medication had been pointed out to them as from somebody external to them as a gap in their behavior. And the problem is, when you have an externally identified gap, what happens is that it becomes a negative emotional attractor. Everything you do to cross that gap either makes you feel obligated because you're crossing it, or guilty because you're not doing it. And because of that, you don't do it at all. So how do you get around this? Well, you get around it with intentional change theory. Intentional change theory is basically the notion that the person themselves has to identify the gap. And in the particular example of the diabetics, they focused on what the ideal self of these people who had diabetes was. And then, like for argument's sake, let's say somebody really wanted to be a very good mother. For argument's sake, that was their ideal self. They themselves were able to figure out if they weren't around to be a very good mother, they were never going to be one. So they internally identified the gap in taking their medication as to being the thing that was preventing them from being their ideal self, and so they took steps to be able to bridge that gap themselves. To put that into pictures, basically, somebody identifies their ideal self and the gap that's stopping them from getting there, right? So basically, it's the difference between the ideal self and the real self. They then figure out a way to cross that gap themselves, and then they themselves cross that gap. And that's how you make change stick. It has to be that gap, and crossing it has to be for them a positive emotional attractor. It has to be something that they're actually interested in doing. When they start to do the experimentation to figure out how to cross it, you know what they do? They're happy about it. For them, they see it as a journey. They're happy to do it. And that's how you make change stick. So the next thing is shifting the burden to the intervener. If the Agile coach comes in and says, hey guys, you're doing it all wrong, this is how you talk to each other, maybe some more stand-ups, whatever else is the problem, everything the Agile coach solves is one less thing the team can solve. And that infantilizes the team. It makes the team less capable. Or, as is known in the scientific world, it's Flanders beat parent syndrome. So when you have that problem, it means that they can't solve their own problems. The next thing you have is, it's not enough to adopt, you have to adapt. Right? When the Agile coach who has years of experience comes in, they have years of experience of other people's problems, other people's circumstances, other people's things. If they try to come in and they try to apply those to your problem, it will not fit. They have to adapt the problem they have, and that requires the team to be involved in that process. So after all this, things of where I'm talking about why the Agile coach doesn't do it, what does the Agile coach actually do? Well, in this case, they do a couple of things. They do 3 levels of reveals. The first of them is to reveal the team to the team. So what this is giving tools and techniques to the team to let them see themselves and fix their own problems. So the first of these is retros, with process, testing, build. Nope, that was a lie. It's team-focused retros. So what are team-focused retros? Team-focused retros are retros that do not talk about what you're currently doing. So if you're making software, they do not talk about making software. If you happen to make cupcakes, it's not about the process of making cupcakes. Instead, it's about the team itself. In this case, team identity. So what these are retros that are focused on team values, team personality. How do people see you externally? In fact, I was in Vicky Schiffer's talk, it was team strengths. But these are all the kind of things that you talk about. The next thing is team makeup. So maybe the skills that are present in the team. Maybe it's the implicit roles that are present in the team that people want to play. Maybe it's how the team members got to be part of that team in the first place. But once you get a better understanding of the team, that retro is about team makeup. And the final thing is systems thinking. These are retros that are just geared about exploring how the team interacts in an environment which isn't about their skills, but instead it's about their personalities. So maybe you get to see people who advocate more than they should. Or maybe they get to see people who sit back. Now there's lots of these, things like community maze, moonball. There's lots of system thinking exercises that focus on these things. The next technique they teach is deep democracy. So deep democracy is interesting, and it's made up of 2 parts. The first part of deep democracy is about having frequent, meaningful decisions made by the team. What that means is it means that you go to the team, they figure out the solution, and then they act upon that solution. And if you don't have that, you don't have deep democracy. But the other part of deep democracy is actually somewhat relevant to Jean-Line Guillaume. Now, how is that possible, you ask yourself wonderingly? He was a 19th century artist. He's not part of the Agile Manifesto. But he did do this. The reason it's important is because he invented this. This is a Roman vote. But in Rome, they actually did this to kill gladiators. He invented this. And so when I talk to you about this, the question is, should I continue with this presentation? Yes, indeed, that's right. Because now I get to see you. I get to see what your action is. I get to see your active consensus. And that's important. It lets me see those that don't agree. It lets me act upon that knowledge. The next type of reveal is revealing team interactions to the team. So what's that? Well, the first of these is violent communication. And violent communication sounds bad, and it is bad. This is basically the unconscious communication that you have with someone else that bruises that person, that causes them to be more stressed. And unfortunately, we all do it. It's a very common thing to do. So when you have a conversation with you, for example, do you check that you're as interested in that person getting their goals met as you are in getting your own needs met? Do you think about when you say no to somebody, do you say no or do you tell them the reasons behind the no? That if you're not doing those things, you're probably violently communicating with them. And it sounds a bit touchy-feely, but it really affects the mood, morale, and ability for the team to collaborate together. So the next thing is levels of conflict. And what this is doing basically is saying, look, conflict is actually really good. The right level of manageable conflict in a team is extremely important. It's because all conflict is an expression of the want to change. And being able to do that, being able to manage it and negotiate with it and figure out that it's a good thing is important to team understanding, and it lowers the stress. But also, the Agile coach is able to understand team conflict escalation. So escalation, they are able to figure out and teach the team when conflict is escalating to a non-productive manner. So it goes through problem to solve, disagreement, contest, conflict, and eventually world war. And the team coach is making sure that it never really gets beyond 3, but not by intervening, but by teaching the skills to the team to make sure that it doesn't. The next reveal is revealing the team members to themselves. Now, what this is about is, indeed, it is a psychologist's couch, but what it's about is, honestly, teams are made up of individuals.